everybody, Payments Professor here on the Payments Podium. And today I have got an incredible guest and an incredible topic to talk about. I know her as Payments Elsa. You may have heard of her as Dr. Angela Murphy. And she's making some big waves and changes in payments today. So let's all welcome Dr. Angela Murphy.
Hello.
All right, so Elsa, I have to say, that's how I know you, and I think that's how everybody should know you. And I think by the time we're done, they will. And you've been on the Payments Podium before. We've had actually like an hour-long discussion just on use cases, thousands actually of views of those episodes that came through. And I had to bring you back on because I heard you recently made a major change to where you are now working when it comes to electronic payments. Would you mind sharing with us what that is?
Yes, it's been a big change in my life and my career, and I'm very excited about it. And I recently joined the team at Pigeon as their vice president of marketing and solutions. So thrilled to be there, love what they're doing, getting to bring all of my talents and expertise to the table as a storyteller and look at use cases, look at strategy, looking at innovation and onboarding, looking toward the future of faster payments. And Pigeon was just a natural fit for me to be able to bring those skills to the table and see how we can drive the industry forward.
Well, okay, in full disclosure, because everybody knows I tell you everything, I try to be as transparent as possible. You probably see in one of the corners the Pigeon logo. Pigeon does actually sponsor the Payments Professor. However, they don't tell me what subjects I have to put on here. They give me free reign to decide, hey, no, they give me sponsorship and they tell me, go find who you want, just have the most active things that are happening in the world of electronic payments. It was my choice alone, that I was like, I got to bring on Dr. Angela Murphy. Now, a little bit more, though, about the work you're doing. What is it that you're actually going to be doing at Pigeon?
So, some of the exciting things that I'm working on being a part of the team at Pigeon is really focusing on our go to market strategy and how we tell the story of faster payments and digital payments in the US and then eventually globally. I have the privilege to be a part of a team that has a wide range of knowledge and expertise. And so, what I'm bringing to the table is my thought leadership, my background in strategy and insight in helping financial institutions understand how payments operates within their institutions and from a Pigeon lens, looking at the communication structures for payments, how payments talk to each other, how we educate FIs about payments, how we educate their end users or their members about payments. So it's really taking all of the skills that I've honed to this point in terms of writing articles, writing blog posts, going out on the speaking circuit and being a part of panels, really driving the next wave of the conversation about faster payments and instant payments and being at the forefront of that with the backing of a company that really does want to be the future of
All right, my
payments.
first question is, did you negotiate a sleeping clause? Because that is a lot of work right there. How are you going to even do all that? So you mentioned you're going to be doing some articles. You mentioned that you're going to be doing some panels, speaking on the circuit as well too. Could you maybe give us a hint of some of the things you'll be speaking about?
So, a couple of the topics that are going to be really interesting for me going into fall conference season this year, I actually am going to be pushing beyond the conversation around use cases. I think that that's a little bit of an outdated talk track. I think if we focus too much as an industry on use cases, we won't see the forest for the trees. We can't solve all problems and be all things to all people. That's not necessarily our job. It's more about providing the tools and the resources within the industry for people, businesses, corporates, whomever, to have options in terms of their payments behavior. So that's going to be one of the things that I drive away from actually is not talking about use cases, but looking at the North Star for payment strategy within institutions that are now looking to adopt the instant payments rails. And that brings me to
Whoa,
the second
slow down.
topic.
Beyond use cases. So I got to play devil's advocate here. What good is having a faster payment channel if people don't have a purpose for using it? And my experience has been, when, like, for example, if I go to Walmart and I go to the toothpaste aisle, y'all go with me. Physically think about being in that toothpaste aisle. What is it like when you go in that aisle? It's overwhelming. Like, I am like, I don't know which one is my toothpaste that I normally get. Maybe I should try another one. I'm not sure. It's overload. But the thing is it's all toothpaste, but there's many ways it can be used. I understand the same thing with faster payments. It's instant payments, Fed now, whoa, we got it in 20 seconds. And there's many ways that it can be used, but I believe most institutions are actually getting that, purchasing, adopting, signing on to the FedNow network for that particular use case for their brand and flavor of toothpaste. Are you saying that's changed?
I think it has. And even if it hasn't, I would like for it to change. I think that in terms of how FIs are looking at faster payments adoption, particularly in the US, they're trying too hard to be myopic problem solvers. So basically, I want to make sure that I have 75 reasons within my institution that we absolutely have to do this. And they point to use cases because that's how you justify the budget, you justify bringing on a third party vendor, you justify the resources that would be required in order to adopt the rail. And I just think it's a backwards way of looking at it. I don't think that we need to look at individual use cases. I think that for FIs, what's important is to look at an innovative payment strategy. And I know that that's a bunch of buzzword overkill in that one statement, but what I'm talking about is let's move beyond just trying to solve everyone's problems. Let's look at the payments behavior within this financial institution, look at who's doing what, how they're transacting, and then see how we can treat payments as a horizontal rather than a verticalized
Okay, okay.
problem.
So maybe it's a case of we put the horse behind the carriage, and that's not really driving what we need to as far as innovation. Well, here's the thing, and then is you're looking towards just more focus on strategy. Is it going to be the same for institutions, or it would at least be the same for, say, smaller institutions, and same for medium, and same for larger institutions, or is it all over the place?
It actually is, I would think, band specific, if you will. So there's kind of bands of financial institutions in terms of asset size and their considerations. For example, the way that credit unions want to interact with their members and the way that they have those personal relationships and drive payments behavior, particularly in A to A, account to account transactions, trying to compete with the likes of a Zelle, let's say, that might be too expensive for a credit union to provide for their members, towards the treasury services that a credit union would offer to their corporate members. Looking at those types of relationships, those types of payments behaviors, that's going to be radically different than, let's say, a 10 billion and above, so like a 10 to 50 billion dollar bank that may be looking at top line revenue, driving deposits. This I have a degree in words and I still don't speak correctly most of the time. You should ask my brother. He's like, that's a $5 word and I have a $2 budget. Can you not? Deposits, driving deposit. I can't do it
It's
now.
this is the special version right here for those of you who have trouble pronouncing words. You see me on stage, I do it too. So that's where we just rewind. So deposits, and we okay, but keep going. I'm sorry.
It all comes out in the wash. So driving deposits and loan activity for what I would consider kind of the middle market institutions, where you're 10 billion to $50 billion in assets, and you're looking at a more expansive approach to payments and the monetization of payments. It also has to do with your interchange and how that affects your bottom line as a bank. And so when you kind of look at these different buckets and then eventually you get up to the top 25, and that's not really my inherent area of expertise, but they have radically different considerations than anybody that's in that sub $100 billion level, and very much different considerations than an institution like the one that I bank with, which is a credit union
Okay,
here in
I gotta
Kansas.
ask then, because most people want like an action item, like go do this, or a checklist of go do these types of items. I've seen you talk before. I know you're really good about telling people, hey, start here, or do this, or do something like that. So for those that are listening, those are considering going to see you at one of these in-person events, what just let at least give us a teaser. Tell us what would be one of those action items, homework assignments you would say they need to do as far as building that faster payment strategy.
So, one of the things that I tell most of the FIs that I work with is that it's about looking within your institution and understanding the payments behavior of your constituents. So, whether they're your members or they're your customers, looking at how individuals, SMBs, and corporates are already transacting within your existing suite of products and services. How many ACH payments are occurring in your institution on a quarterly basis? How many wires? Do you have Zelle? And if you have Zelle, how many transactions are running through Zelle on your platform? Because some institutions do have that. Mine doesn't, but some do. Looking at within your treasury services division or your corporate services division, what's the breakdown of the verticals of the corporates that you're already working with? So, are they primarily in manufacturing? Are they SMB, mom and pop? Are they something else, maybe in a different vertical, maybe retailer? Like, look at retail. And the way that those customers or those members make those payments can tell you a lot about where the money is being left on the table in terms of not only the fee structure to the institution and to the client, but also looking at how to solve for that in a cost efficient way. So, for example, one of the institutions that I advise has a lot of aviation manufacturing clients, and they're a Midwestern bank, third generation. And they're looking at, okay, well, a lot of this is transacting on check. We know how expensive that is. So can you, and that's what I asked them to do. I said, can you look within Treasury, look at what your corporate aviation clients are doing, look at how they're transacting. Most of that is going through on an invoice and a check, it's on paper. And then looking at being able to optimize that. So reducing the float, which reduces the pressure on the working capital for that business, potentially educating them about faster payments and instant payments and being able to schedule at 4:59 p.m. Central Time on a Friday to pay for an invoice and looking at the cost of all of that. So, the action item that I always ask and I start first is what's the payments behavior within your institution? Look at the different types of payments and then look at the breakdown of who's using those payments, how and why. And then you can run an analysis and do kind of like an ROI calculator, if you will,
So
on
what
what's
I heard
best.
is you better start off with knowing where you're at so you can figure out where you want to go. Okay, with those deposits.
Exactly.
Now, here's something else you said too is you're doing a lot of communications and white papers. Can you give us a teaser about the white papers that are coming out and maybe where people would go to get those if they want to be able to read through them?
Absolutely. So I have 3 white papers that are coming out in the next 60 days. It's actually a little bit closer to 30 to 45 days. One is going to be about account to account behavior for individuals. So to go back and kind of poke at the use case idea, a lot of the critiques that I've heard over the last 2 years about the faster payments rails is, well, no one's walking into my bank branch and asking me for a Fed now. And I was like, of course they're not. I wouldn't ask you for a Fed now.
Well, I haven't heard them ask
Um,
for an ache either. So I mean ACH. So
no, exactly. It's like my friends don't know what an ACH is. Like I have no idea. So the first white paper that's going to come out actually in the next 2 weeks is going to be on account to account behaviors and digital wallet behaviors in the US as an indicator of why and how instant payments should be functioning within financial institutions. So, looking at PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, Apple Wallet, stored value, stored credential, looking at the basically large market share that digital wallets already have in the US as the key for why we should be doing this. I mean, the banks didn't build it, somebody else did, and they went like, hello, Field of Dreams. Like, PayPal basically functions as a bank because of the amount of money that they move from one fiat to another, if you will, like a card, a bank account, etc. And so one is on account to account behavior, digital wallets as basically the proof that we need instant payment schemes in the US for individual transactions. The second one is actually going to be doing a global look at faster payment schemes and instant payment schemes. So looking at India, looking at Brazil, looking at the European Union, and then looking at North America and looking at the US and saying, okay, well, where do we fit into this story? If we look at the adoption and the drivers in these other markets, are there
Okay,
lessons
one question
learned?
I got to ask right away because it
And
always comes up is people will say, if we look at UPI in India, we look at Pix in Brazil, the government got involved, and we know the government's not getting involved in ours. I mean, I wish they would announce how they're going to use FedNow. Maybe that might help, but we're not seeing them getting involved. Do you solve an answer for that as well?
I actually think that based on the different economic concerns for the countries that have already spun up these different rails, that yeah, they do have different considerations. And yes, their government did need to get involved, partially because they were such cash heavy economies. So if you look at Brazil and you look at India, and specifically if you look at India 7 years ago, they had a new prime minister and a minister of, it might have been trade or finance, and I apologize because I don't know the exact title, but this person essentially came into power several years ago and liquidated 70% of the cash currency in India. And it became part of the impetus for UPI to occur and to have that wider usage. Same thing in Brazil. There's a lot of corruption in a cash economy and a lot of behaviors that may not necessarily be appropriate. I'm not going to say what that would be, but just there are certain types of aspects of a cash economy that are nefarious. And so I understand
Hey,
the
I'll say it. I
geopolitical.
call it shame money. It's the things you're too ashamed to admit you used your cash for. That's the way I refer to it.
Exactly, exactly. So I think in particular in the US, we have different geopolitical considerations. And I don't actually think that our government should get involved. This may be an unpopular opinion for a variety of reasons, but I've said this on stage before, and this is kind of my own personal opinion. I happen to be one of the experts in this industry, and I drive every day to learn more and to be better and to understand how this underpins our economy and what it means for individuals as well as small businesses and corporates. I do not have a high level of faith in regulatory entities to understand payments at a level that would make them make good policy choices. That I'll put it
Can
that
I
way.
defend my regulatory friends for a second? First of all, a lot of the people who are making policy have no idea what payments is like. And those of us who work in electronic payments will even tell you there's even only a small percentage of us that actually get this. It's really a weird niche in the industry. I too am a big fan of having whatever choices you want to have available. And I think that's part of the American payment system and what helps make it great. But it's also what also makes it hard for them is there's so many different options. It's hard to know one at an expert level, let alone several. And I think that's where, too, you mentioned education earlier, that I believe
Mhm.
as an industry, we need to take more charge. You're doing this too, to help educate ourselves in the industry and to help educate the financial institutions and to help educate at the end of the day, the people who are using and making these payments.
Exactly. I think that education is key, and I wouldn't expect anyone who would be charged with creating a policy to know what we know. It's so challenging. There's certifications, there's on the ground knowledge, there's the godfathers of this industry that built these frames. And it's just when you're a policymaker, I do understand those challenges. And at the end of the day, yeah, maybe it could be nice if there was a mandate and somebody came down and said, you have to do this, but nobody mandated that people use Venmo. They just started doing it because they needed to, and the government didn't have to get involved. So rather than try to convert a bunch of other folks, regulators, policymakers, the like, into a payments expert, maybe we just listen to the experts, make sure that, as far as, regulatory frameworks goes, FDIC, all of those things, Dodd-Frank, that we maintain the structures that we have in place and not really open up a can of worms, and trust that between the technology providers, the FIs, and then the experts that are helping guide the conversation, that we will make choices and create behaviors and structures that directly benefit the American people.
I totally agree with you. And I got another area I got to ask you about, and that's thought leadership. Because I understand now with your new role, you've actually expanded a lot of what you're going to do in this realm of what we were just talking about, educating, helping to influence the industry and get word out there. So when I say Dr. Angela Murphy, who works for Pigeon, what's this thought leadership thing that you've got going on?
So I have developed a persona, I guess, if you will, in the industry, just like you have as the payments professor. I am known fondly as Payments Elsa. There is a little braid here. I'm sure that everybody can see. Most of the time, if you see me on the speaking circuit, my hair is braided and I have some form of blue or glitter on me somewhere. It's just kind of standard. And so I've actually started putting out more video content. So I was inspired by what you have done over the years in terms of risk, fraud, compliance, the regulatory environment, and the way that you've made that more accessible to practitioners in our industry. And I thought, well, maybe I could do that, but more on strategy, innovation. Let's do a blueprint for how you would think about asking the right questions. And so I have a YouTube channel. I have my LinkedIn channel / Payments Elsa on LinkedIn. And then I also have an Instagram channel where and I've started to put out reels. So it's going to be these kind of bite-sized snapshots of my perspective on the industry, breaking down acronyms and the alphabet soup of everything that we all deal with, looking at how do we just answer some maybe bigger questions and also smaller questions about what it takes to engage in the payments industry and what it means. So basically, taking my views, my expertise as a rhetorician by trade, and talking to people about something that even 6 years ago, I personally didn't understand at all.
Okay, so basically, if somebody has a PPT and they IDC because they need to LOL with an RTP, they can go follow you and you'll be able to help them. Again, where do they go
Yeah.
follow you? How do they find you?
So LinkedIn.com / Payments Elsa, hashtag Payments Elsa, because that has become a thing now as well. And then at Payments Elsa on Instagram, and then YouTube as well will be Elsa at Payments Elsa.
All right. Well, everybody, we're going to wrap it up here. And I just want to say, Elsa, thank you for being on here, and letting this information go out into the universe here to be able to help everybody else. For those of you who need to find Payments Elsa, it's paymentselsa.com. It's Elsa at paymentselsa.com. It's Payments Elsa on Instagram. It's Payments Elsa on LinkedIn. Anywhere you can find Payments Elsa, you find Payments Elsa. Okay. And if you have trouble finding her, get in touch with me, Kevin at paymentsprofessor.com. I'll make sure to get you in touch with her. As always, she's going to be doing just like I'm going to be doing. And we're looking for what are the topics, what are the subjects, what are the speakers that you want to have us address. So I'm here to be able to help you. If there is a speaker that maybe you think needs to be on the Payments Podium, there's a topic you want to have addressed, send that over to me, Kevin at paymentsprofessor.com. I'll get it taken care of. But for now, this is where I say, class dismissed.